Welcome to Heartbreaker, your love radio.
The soft light of dawn had barely begun to illuminate the kitchen when John was already up, caught in the usual morning rush. The vibrant sound of Emma and Lucas' laughter filled the air as he tried to balance cereal bowls and mentally plan the route to school. It all seemed like a chaotic yet familiar orchestra, until the phone rang. Who could it be at this hour? John muttered, glancing at the clock, which read 7:30. He reached out to grab the phone, balancing himself to avoid spilling the milk. Hello? He said, a bit more abrupt than he intended. John, it's me. Sarah's voice was clear, but tense on the other end of the line. Sorry to call so early, love, but I have a problem. He furrowed his brow, concern tinging his words. What happened, Sarah? Is everything okay? Not exactly, she sighed heavily. My purse was stolen last night. I was in the hotel lobby going to get a newspaper and, when I realized, it was already gone. John felt a pang of anxiety. Are you okay? And the cards, our money. I'm fine, but yes, the cards were in the purse. We need to cancel everything, John. Can you take care of that now? Of course, I'll do it right away. And the police, did you talk to them? Sarah hesitated, her silence carrying a weight he could almost feel. Not yet, I was thinking of not involving the police. I just want to forget about it and move on. The response caught him off guard, creating a knot of doubt in his stomach. Are you sure? This sounds serious, Sarah. And it is, I know. But please, just take care of the cards for now. I'll handle the rest. Oh, and John, please request new company cards too. I'll need them before traveling again. The conversation left John with more questions than answers, but he agreed. Okay, I'll do that now. Take care, okay? And please keep me informed. Thank you, I will. And sorry for this. Love you all. We love you too. John hung up the phone, feeling a strange mix of concern and confusion. Looking at his children, who were distracted with their morning tasks, he knew he had to stay calm and sort out the situation. But deep down, the nagging feeling that something wasn't right began to settle in, promising not to leave anytime soon. After taking care of canceling the credit cards and ensuring that new ones would be sent, John tried to resume his normal routine. However, the morning's incident left a shadow of unease that he couldn't shake off. Determined to organize some paperwork while the kids were at school, he rummaged through files in search of the home insurance policy document. That's when a poorly placed folder caught his attention. Curious, John pulled it out and opened it, finding a series of bank statements that he didn't immediately recognize. They were from Sarah's personal account, something he knew little about, respecting the privacy and space she had always wanted to manage her parents' inheritance. However, a specific statement caught his eye, a $3,000 withdrawal made 6 weeks ago. Now, that's strange, John muttered to himself, furrowing his brow as he flipped through more pages. There was also a note about a subsequent purchase on the same date as the withdrawal, at a local jewelry store. Intrigued and concerned, he decided to call the jewelry store. He disguised his voice with a generic customer concern. Hello, I'm calling to verify a recent purchase made with you. It was quite a high payment, and I would like to confirm some details about the product and warranty. The attendant, after checking the transaction, replied with professional warmth, of course, sir. I see here it was a purchase of 2 rings, 1 wedding band and 1 engagement ring. Would you like me to check any specifics about the items? John felt the ground shift beneath his feet. A wedding and engagement rings, you said? That's interesting. And could you tell me if it was purchased under the name of Sarah? Sarah Johnson. Yes, it was under the name of Sarah Johnson, confirmed the attendant. She mentioned they were to replace ones that had recently been stolen. Can I assist with anything else? The mention of "E recently stolen" just sent a chill down John's spine. And no, that's all for now. Thank you for your help, he said, quickly hanging up. Sitting down, he tried to digest the information. Why would Sarah buy replacement rings without mentioning that the originals had been stolen? Why would she withdraw such a large amount from the account without discussing it with him? The uncomfortable feeling that something was wrong now turned into a concrete suspicion. John knew he needed more answers before confronting Sarah. With a deep breath, he decided his next course of action would be to check the details of that specific trip. Something didn't add up, and he was determined to find out what it was, no matter how painful it might be. After hanging up the phone, John remained seated, lost in thought. The news that Sarah had purchased wedding and engagement rings to replace supposed stolen ones was more than suspicious. He knew he needed more information before he could confront her with his findings. Deciding to act, he picked up the phone again and dialed the jewelry store's number. Hello, sorry to bother you again, John began, trying to keep his voice calm. I called earlier about a purchase made by my wife, Sarah Johnson. You mentioned she was replacing some stolen rings. That concerns me because she never told me the original rings were stolen. Oh, yes, replied the attendant, recalling their previous conversation. She seemed quite distraught about the situation. Said she had lost the original rings and wanted to replace them as soon as possible. Could you tell me exactly when she made this purchase? John asked. Let me check, said the attendant, typing on her computer. Here it is, it was made 6 weeks ago, the day after the withdrawal you mentioned. John took note of the information, thanking the attendant before hanging up. He sat down, trying to piece together the puzzle. Sarah had withdrawn $3,000 from the account on the same day the rings were purchased. And she had never mentioned any theft of the original rings to him. All of this, coupled with her strange reluctance to involve the police in the supposed theft of her purse, added layers of doubt and suspicion. Determined to confront Sarah directly about his findings, he waited until she returned home that evening. When she walked in, looking tired but smiling, John was sitting in the living room, documents and notes spread out in front of him. Sarah, we need to talk, John said seriously as she placed her keys and purse on the entryway table. Of course, what's going on? Sarah asked, sitting down beside him, noticing the papers. Sarah, why did you buy new wedding and engagement rings without telling me the old ones were stolen? And why did you withdraw $3,000 from your investment account on the same day you bought these rings? John asked, getting straight to the point. Sarah went pale, clearly caught off guard. I was going to tell you, she began, hesitantly. I lost the rings and didn't want you to worry. I was planning to replace them before you even noticed. But why didn't you tell me about the theft? And why did you avoid the police both in the purse case and with the rings? John pressed, his voice laden with confusion and distrust. Sarah sighed, looking away. I just thought it would be easier to handle this on my own. I didn't want to add more stress to our lives. John watched her, trying to decipher if there was truth in her words or if there was still more she was hiding. The night stretched on with more questions than answers, and John knew that trust between them had been shaken. He needed time and more evidence to fully understand the situation, and Sarah needed to be more open about her movements and decisions. The distrust that settled in that night would be a challenge for both of them to overcome. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in John and Sarah's home was fraught with palpable tension. John, still disturbed by the recent discoveries and Sarah's evasive responses, decided to delve deeper. He needed to understand Sarah's travel patterns and any other behavior that might have gone unnoticed. While she was at work, John took the opportunity to thoroughly search her work briefcase, which Sarah typically left in the home office. As he rummaged through the compartments of the briefcase, John found an envelope tucked away in the bottom of a side pocket. His heart raced as he recognized the logo of a pharmacy on the envelope. Inside, there was a box of condoms, clearly opened and missing a few units. The discovery left John cold, considering his vasectomy years ago, a fact that rendered the need for condoms for the couple redundant. The house was quiet when Sarah walked in, tired from work, but she was greeted not by John's usual warm embrace, but by his serious expression and hardened demeanor. He was sitting on the living room couch, a pile of papers scattered on the coffee table. The atmosphere was charged with tension that she immediately sensed. John. What's going on? Sarah asked, placing her bag on the floor with a slight tremor in her voice. We need to talk, Sarah, John said, his voice firm but laden with restrained emotion. Sarah felt her heart race, her stomach twisting with a bad premonition. What have you found out? John picked up one of the papers and stood up, facing her. Why didn't you tell me about him, Sarah? He threw the words like arrows. John, Sarah began, but her voice faltered. I found the contraceptives, Sarah. And I talked to the hotel reception about your frequent visits from a certain guest while you were there, John continued, each word marked by pain and betrayal. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing there was no more room for lies. John, I'm so sorry. I never wanted things to come to this point. It was a terrible mistake. A mistake. John almost shouted, anguish evident on his face. You call months of lies a mistake? How could you do this to me, to our family? I know it's unforgivable, Sarah said, tears starting to flow. I just felt so alone, and he was there. But that doesn't justify it. I'm so sorry, John. John shook his head, incredulous. Alone? We are a marriage, Sarah. If you felt alone, you should have come to talk to me, not throw yourself into another man's arms. I know it was wrong, she sobbed. I didn't expect things to go this far. I wanted to stop, but... But you didn't stop, John interrupted, bitterness tainting his words. You chose to keep going. You chose him over us. Sarah tried to approach him, reaching out. John, please, I want to fix this. John stepped back, avoiding her touch. How can I trust you again, Sarah? How? Sarah fell silent, words caught in her throat, despair clear in her eyes. John took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions within him. I don't know if there's anything to fix here, Sarah. I need time away from you to think. Please, don't give up on us, she pleaded, her voice broken with pain. John looked at her, eyes filled with unshed tears. I don't know if I can forgive this, Sarah. I really don't know. With that, he turned and climbed the stairs, leaving her alone with the magnitude of her mistake and the deafening sound of what seemed to be the end of their marriage. In the solitude of the room, Sarah remained still, watching John's figure disappear upstairs. Each of his steps echoed like a farewell, marking the rhythm of a marriage that seemed to unravel. Tears streamed freely down her face, each one carrying the weight of her regret and the love she feared she had lost forever. Slowly, she sank onto the couch, picking up the papers John had left on the table. Among them was a printout of exchanged emails, hotel bookings unrelated to her professional commitments, and the pharmacy records for the contraceptives. Each document was evidence of her betrayal, a reminder of her wrong choices. Sarah knew she had to do something, but a sense of helplessness overwhelmed her. The house, once filled with laughter and conversation, now felt like a silent courtroom, judging her for her mistakes. She thought of the children, sleeping peacefully in their rooms, unaware of the storm brewing in their home. The idea that her actions could destroy their stability was more painful than any confrontation with John. With a heavy sigh, she picked up her phone and dialed the number of a close friend. Upon hearing the voice on the other end, Sarah broke down. I've messed everything up, Linda, she said between sobs. Linda, sensing the gravity of the situation, tried to calm Sarah. Breathe, Sarah. Talk to me. What exactly happened? Sarah recounted everything, from the beginning of the affair to the devastating confrontation with John. Linda listened in silence, her heart aching for her friend's pain. Sarah, now is not the time to drown in guilt. You need to think clearly about what you want for the future. If there's a chance to mend your marriage, you'll need to be honest not only with John, but also with yourself about the reasons that led you to this. I know, but John said he doesn't know if he can forgive me. What if he decides to end it all? Then you'll face it when it happens. For now, give him the space he needs to process all of this. And maybe it's a good idea for you both to seek professional help. A therapist could help mediate this crisis. Do you think there's still hope? Sarah asked, her voice weak. I can't promise that everything will be okay, Sarah. But I know that giving up without trying everything is worse. Talk to John about therapy. Show him that you're committed to making the necessary changes. Encouraged by her friend's words, Sarah felt a thread of hope. She knew the next few weeks might be the hardest of her life, but she was determined to do whatever it took to not only repair her marriage, but also heal herself from the wounds she had inflicted on herself and her family. Hanging up the phone, Sarah climbed the stairs slowly. She stopped in front of the door to the room she shared with John, taking a deep breath before entering. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring into space. Unsure if her words would be welcomed, she began softly. John, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix my mistake. What can we do? Can I look for a therapist for us, if you're willing to try? John looked at Sarah, his face a mirror of internal conflict. He shook his head slowly, the decision weighing in every movement. Sarah, I understand that you want to try, that you want to fix things, John began, his voice low and controlled. But, honestly, I feel like we're past the point of just trying to repair. I need more than therapy now. I need space. I need to think. Sarah felt a knot form in her throat, her last hopes starting to fade. A space for what, John? To think about us or to think about a life without me? John sighed, his gaze fixed on the floor before meeting hers again. I'm going to look for a lawyer, Sarah. I think it's time for us to consider separation. It's not just about forgiving, it's about trusting again. And I don't know if I can do that. John's words hit Sarah like a wave, leaving her momentarily breathless. Are you serious? Separation? After everything we've been through together, you're just giving up. It's not giving up, John corrected firmly. It's recognizing that maybe some mistakes are too big to fix. I can't stay in a marriage where I have to wonder if the person beside me is really with me. Tears streamed freely down Sarah's face now, her posture of strength crumbling. So, is that it? Is our marriage over? John stood up, the weight of each word evident in his weary expression. I think we need some time to assess things separately. I'll talk to a lawyer and see what our options are. It's not an easy decision, Sarah, but it's what I can do right now. Sarah watched John leave the room, feeling like the ground beneath her had been ripped away. She knew her mistakes had come at a high cost, but the reality of her marriage crumbling before her eyes was more painful than she could have imagined. In the following days, the house was engulfed in a somber silence. John made arrangements to meet with a lawyer, while Sarah struggled to keep composed in front of the children, who felt the tension but didn't fully understand the magnitude of the impending changes. Sarah felt a growing urgency to try once more to reach John and convince him to reconsider. She couldn't simply let her family fall apart without fighting with all her might to prevent it. On a gray afternoon, while John was in the home office reading about separation procedures, Sarah gently knocked on the door, holding 2 coffee cups as a peace offering. John, can I come in? She asked, her voice trembling but determined. John looked up, visibly tense, but nodded. Of course. Sarah entered, placing one of the cups in front of him before sitting across the table. She watched him for a moment, searching for the right words to begin a conversation she knew was crucial. John, I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. About us, she began, trying to keep calm. And I know I asked you to consider therapy, but maybe I haven't expressed how important it is to me, to us. John sighed, looking at the coffee cup but not touching it. Sarah, I understand that you want to try to fix things, but nothing, John. I know I messed up, I know I hurt you deeply, but are we throwing away everything we've built together? Sarah interrupted, emotion rising in her voice. It's not just about me or you, it's about our children too. They deserve us to try everything before we give up. John remained silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the dark liquid in the cup. Finally, he looked at Sarah. Do you really think we can get through this? After everything? I don't know, Sarah admitted, her honesty raw. But I want to try. I need to try, John. If there's still any love here, any love at all, shouldn't we fight for it? John took a deep breath, clearly wrestling with his own emotions. Sarah, part of me wants to try too. But the other part? I understand the fear, I really do. But I also know that fear shouldn't be the reason we don't try, Sarah said, taking his hand. Let's try therapy. If, in the end, we still feel that separation is the only option, at least we'll know we did everything we could. John looked at her hands on his, feeling the familiar warmth he'd always felt with her touch. After a long pause, he finally said, his voice firm and decisive. Sarah, no. I've thought a lot about this, and there's no going back. It's over. I'm sorry, but I can't go on with this. Not after everything that's happened. Sarah was stunned, his words cutting off any hope she had. So that's it, she whispered, her voice breaking. Yes, that's it, John replied, getting up from the table. I've already hired a lawyer. I think it's best for each of us to go our separate ways. With a broken heart, Sarah watched John leave the room, leaving her alone with her pain and the untouched coffee cups between them. The future she had feared so much was unfolding before her, and all she could do was face the abyss that was opening up. In that moment, a sense of isolation and despair washed over Sarah. John's words echoed in her mind, each syllable a hammer destroying the last hope of reconciliation. She remained seated, immobile, as tears began to stream down her face, each one marking the slow fading of a marriage she had cherished so much. After what felt like hours, Sarah finally stood up. She knew she couldn't stay there, trapped in that room that now felt more like a backdrop to her worst memories than a home. Walking slowly to the window, she looked outside, watching the gray sky that seemed to reflect her inner state. The world outside continued its daily routine, indifferent to her pain. With a deep sigh, she picked up the phone and dialed her sister's number. Upon hearing her sister's familiar voice on the other end of the line, Sarah couldn't help but let out a sob. He decided. We're getting divorced. He already has a lawyer, she managed to say between sobs. Her sister, alarmed by Sarah's state, tried to comfort her with reassuring words. Sarah, where are you right now? Are you alone? Can I come over? I'm at home, yes, please come. I really need someone right now, Sarah replied, her voice trembling. I'm coming right away, Sarah. Hang in there, I'll be there in a few minutes, her sister said, trying to convey some strength through the phone. Hanging up, Sarah sat on the couch, trying to compose herself before her sister's arrival. She knew the next steps would be incredibly difficult. Dividing years of shared life, deciding on custody of the children, and facing the world as a divorced woman were challenges she never imagined she would have to face. But now, faced with the inevitability of these events, she knew she needed to strengthen herself, not only for herself but for her children. When her sister arrived, she found Sarah still on the couch, pale and visibly shaken. Without saying a word, she sat next to her, enveloping her in a tight hug. Sarah allowed herself to cry, pouring out all the pain and fear she felt. Together, they stayed like that for a long time, sharing the silence that said everything words couldn't express. In that moment of vulnerability, Sarah realized how crucial her family and friend support would be in the days to come. With them, she would find the strength needed to navigate the impending storm of her life. Meanwhile, John, on the other hand, was facing his own journey of introspection and rebuilding, pondering the consequences of his decision as he prepared for the legal and emotional challenges that lay ahead. A few days later, John found himself in his lawyer's office, an austere and professional space that seemed to reflect the seriousness of the decisions he was about to make. Sitting across from the lawyer, John listened attentively as they discussed the legal aspects of the divorce. "I understand that this is a difficult situation, Mr. John, but it's important that we consider all practical aspects of the division," the lawyer explained, flipping through documents. This includes asset division, custody arrangements for the children, and any potential alimony. John, with a tense expression, nodded. "I want to ensure that everything is done fairly, especially when it comes to our children. I want the best for them." Of course, the lawyer agreed. Let's discuss custody. Do you have any specific ideas on how you would like this to be arranged? John hesitated, the reality of discussing custody of his children weighing heavily on his heart. "I would like joint custody. Sarah is a good mother, and I don't want to separate the kids from her. But I also want to be involved as much as possible." Understood. "I'll prepare a joint custody agreement proposal," replied the lawyer, jotting it down. "And now, regarding asset division, we need to list all the assets and decide how they will be divided." Meanwhile, Sarah was in a similar meeting with her lawyer, an equally solemn setting. She felt a mix of anxiety and determination as they discussed her situation. "Sarah, it's important that you think about what's essential for you in this division," her lawyer advised. "This includes your home, investments, and any financial support you may need in the immediate future." Sarah took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I really want to keep the house, if possible. It would be best for the kids to maintain some stability." "I'll do my best to make that happen," said the lawyer, taking note of it. "And what about financial support?" "I have my own job, but with the kids, it might be a bit more complicated. Maybe some kind of temporary alimony, until I can adjust my work situation to cover all expenses," Sarah suggested, feeling more and more like she was navigating uncharted waters. Back in John's lawyer's office, he raised concerns about the financial division. "I want to make sure Sarah has what she needs to take care of the kids. I don't want them to suffer any more than necessary because of this separation." Understood, Mr. John. "I'll draft something that reflects your willingness to provide financial support until everything stabilizes," said the lawyer, preparing the final notes of the meeting. After meetings with their respective lawyers, John and Sarah entered the final phase of their separation. Documents were carefully reviewed and signed, and the division of assets, custody agreements, and financial arrangements were established. The separation, though civilized in legal terms, left a deep mark on both, especially on Sarah, who struggled with a growing sense of regret and loss. John, on the other hand, embarked on his new life with a mixture of relief and melancholy. He moved into a smaller apartment, more suitable for his new status as a single father with joint custody. The environment was new and devoid of the memories that permeated his old home, offering him a space to start anew. In the following months, he dedicated himself to redefining his life, establishing a new routine with his children, and exploring hobbies he had neglected over the years of marriage. He often took Emma and Lucas for hikes and outdoor activities, trying to make up for lost time and strengthen his bond with them in this new chapter of their lives. John also found comfort and support in a support group for divorced parents, where he shared his experiences and learned from others. Meanwhile, Sarah faced her own battles. While she maintained the house and had managed to stabilize her professional life to sustain her children's needs, she often found herself wandering through rooms echoing with memories of a family life that no longer existed. The weight of her past decisions and their impact on her family often consumed her, and she spent many nights reflecting on what she could have done differently. Her regret was not only for the loss of John, but for the understanding that her actions had shattered the foundation of her family. She tried to channel this regret into being the best mother possible, focusing on providing stability and love for Emma and Lucas, striving to ensure that they felt the least possible effects of the divorce. Over time, Sarah also began attending therapy to deal with her guilt and regret, seeking healing and understanding of her own flaws and strengths. She learned to forgive herself and accept that, while she couldn't change the past, she could work to be a better person in the future. Years later, as John and Sarah continued their separate lives, both reflected on the journey they had traveled. John, now more resilient and content with his rebuilt life, rarely looked back with anything other than a lesson learned. Sarah, on the other hand, though wiser and more stable, never ceased to feel a twinge of sadness for what was lost. And so, each in their own way, John and Sarah moved forward, learning from their mistakes and celebrating their victories, while raising their children to be strong, happy, and loved, regardless of the circumstances that had led them there.